So I'd like to talk a little bit about attachment, but before we get into attachment theory with John Bowlby, I'd like to talk about uh, imprinting with Conrad Lawrence. And I just think this is such a cool concept. I mean, uh, I don't know if you've ever seen the videos. I posted a video on attachment theory, and they showed a video within that program of Conrad Lawrence. And uh, so, uh, he took two groups of eggs for ducks, and one group, he was present when they hatched, and the other group, he wasn't. And the group that he wasn't present for did not imprint on him, but uh, the group he was present for the hatching, uh, they imprinted and bonded with him. And there's all these videos of, him walking along or swimming in a lake, and all of these baby ducklings following him all around. Um, so it didn't have to be with another duck or a mother duck, but so one of the interesting things about this is that, um, he talked about uh, adaptive survival values in behavior and evolutionary history. Different behavior patterns promote survival, um, like animals' instinctual survival skills, learned survival skills. Monkeys teach other monkey skills. They can learn from one another. Um, and the concept of imprinting. He used this example of imprinting to explain both instinctual evolutionary survival skills and the concept of a sensitive period. Um, there's this movie that I think it was made by Disney, I'm not sure, but um, you know, I think it was called Fly Away, and it had this little girl, and there were these geese, and they imprinted on her, but she wanted to teach them how to fly and how to uh, move to the north and the south when it was time for a change of seasons. So they needed to learn how to migrate, and she created this ultralight flyer, and they would follow her, and she taught them how uh, to migrate. Um, Now that's based on a true story, but the true story did not have a little girl in it. It had like this middle-aged hippie, but of course that's not as cute. Um, so, uh, but it's a good film. It's a family film all about imprinting. So let's talk about what Lorenz called the sensitive period. Um, I call these windows of learning opportunity. But so uh, individuals acquire certain capacities at specific times throughout their span of development. And so with ducks, it's when they're born, there's a short window for imprinting, and hopefully they imprint on a caregiver that will take care of them and teach them. Um, but it also has to do with all different animals, including humans. And so one of the interesting things is that there's a window of opportunity for learning language or multiple languages. So for example, um, toddlers learning to talk. If it's a one language household, they learn that one language. If it is a two language household, Um, it, it really depends on how the adults and siblings use that language. So, or the two languages. So if they speak one language, uh, maybe um, when they're talking about work, or when they're more formal, or when they go out, and they talk another language when they are informal, just doing things around the house. Um, so the child is able to differentiate between the two languages. Then that is a positive thing for that child. Not only do they learn language, but they create a cognitive map for constructing grammar and rules of grammar and vocabulary. It also makes it easier for them to learn a new language uh, later on in school. So, however, if the adults and siblings mix languages together, so they might say a sentence and half of it is one language and half of it is another, then that becomes confusing for the child, and they may actually have trouble with languages and grammar because they weren't taught to differentiate between the two languages. Uh, there is also a time to learn music and excel. Now you can learn language and music and abstract thought at any age, but I'm talking windows of opportunity to excel. Um, so to truly learn a musical instrument and become a concert virtuoso, they need to begin uh, before the age of 10. There's also connections between things like music and math. Um, I had a personal experience about abstract thought, algebra and statistics and things like that. I had started school early, um, and so I was younger than most of the other kids. And I did pretty well until middle school. And then I just could not grasp abstract math. So we were learning algebra 1 and 2 and things like that. And um, for some reason, it was frustrating. I got stuck, and uh, I kind of just thought, well, maybe I'm just not good at math. But then in college, uh, I took psych minor, and I had to take a statistics class. And boy, I was dreading it because I'm like, well, I'm just not good at math. And all of a sudden, um, it clicked. And I later read that there are periods in our growth and development, and I had just not reached that period because I was too young in middle school. So, and this has to do with so many different things in life. Now, they have tested this. There's not a window for everything, and I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. Um, and it's not like you can't learn something if you start later. Uh, I believe in lifelong learning, and I think that is a positive thing. Okay, so that's the basics of Conrad Lawrence, and they will talk about him more in the uh, Films on Demand video. Now, I want to go over the notes for John Bowlby and attachment theory, but I also want to talk about what I see in attachment theory when I'm working as a therapist. I also talked about this a little bit in our DSM class. Okay, so John Bowlby applied this theory to infant caregiver relationships, and he wanted to look at bonding and imprinting. Um, and attachment theory studies that role that attachments, primarily parental or caregiver, uh, how they play a role in shaping the life of an individual starting at a very young age. Now, Bowlby goes into the specific concept of attachment in great deal. Now, in great detail, I would refer you also to Erickson's stage theory and his first stage of development, which is trust versus mistrust. And I think that has a lot to do with attachment. We'll talk about that connection when I talk about therapeutic aspects and attachment. So, it's the relationship that a baby has with caregivers, especially, a mother, if not a mother, uh, you know, father, grandparent, whoever is the primary caregiver as a baby. So the first 2 years is critical in anybody's development. And most people think, oh, this is just a baby, when in reality, uh, so much learning and brain growth, basically neuron development and, things like that, dendrite connections, the creation of cognitive mapping, so much growth occurs in the first 2 years of life, we normally don't even realize it. So Bowlby studied the importance of attachment, separation, loss, in human development, the effects on, quote, normal children, particularly interested in how individuals' sense of being, excuse me, being and worthwhile and uh, the views of their own competence, and Bandura would call this self-efficacy, develop along with their views of others. The role of attachment figures was studied. So let's just look at his stage outline. We have the pre-attachment phase, which is the first 6 weeks of life. And so much happens in that first month and a half. I did not realize this until I had children of my own. The bonding, the nurturing, the eye contact, holding the child, rocking them to sleep, helping them to feel safe, hugging them and loving them, the sound of the voice that we make, nurturing them, whether it's breastfeeding or giving them a bottle, um, talking with them at that very young age. All of those things make such a difference. Second stage is attachment in the making, 6 weeks to 6 months. Critical period of bonding, and children will recognize the voice of a caregiver. They'll recognize the facial uh, recognition. They'll recognize the smell of a caregiver. Clear-cut attachment is the third phase, 6 to 8 months, and to 18 months. So half a year to a year and a half. They can experience separation anxiety if they are separated from the caregiver. We want them to have a secure base, uh, you know, and they want to experience a secure base. Children tend to move away so far and then run back. They even make a game out of it. They might gradually move farther and farther away, but usually they want that caregiver to be within eyesight. The fourth phase is a reciprocal relationship at 18 months, where it's not only the caregiver showing all of these things like love and, uh, you know, compassion, but the toddler responds as well. I remember when, I would hold a baby and give it a bottle and rock it, and then I would pick it up and hold it and pat its back to burp it. And every one of my children around this time, I would pat their back and they would start to pat my back because they saw it as a sign of love and affection. So there's three types of responding, and Ainsworth talks about this, and I also included a slide presentation on this. They call it, in an experiment, the strange situation. Um, so uh, it, they put a child in all kinds of different situations, like what if a caregiver left and a stranger came in? What if, they didn't come back right away? All kinds of different situations. So they came up with a concept of a secure pattern. The infant responds to a caregiver easily and continues exploratory behavior, interacts well with people and things in the world. Then there's the anxious ambivalent pattern. The child becomes anxious because parent or caregiver is inconsistent. Child's view of oneself is full of uncertainty. There's decreased exploratory behavior. Now, Erickson also talked about this in his other stages, and he talked about it in the autonomy stage and a few other stages. And so just compare these different theories. There's the avoidant pattern. An infant ignores or rejects care, develops a sense of being alone in the world or unable to trust others. That would be unsuccessful attachment in my mind. And, I just think that that is detrimental in so many different ways. All right. That's the basics of Bowlby. And, I think that that is also a lot of what you need to remember. But it goes into a little more detail in the book and also in the Films on Demand video.